All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the third class in the series Journey of the Soul. I'm sorry. All right. Uh, Please, everyone, mute yourself unless you wanna join, so we don't have background noise. If not, I'll just have to mute all of you forcefully. Okay, so we're on the third journey, the third part of our journey of the soul. And we spent the first 2 weeks really focusing on the deceased, on the person that passes away, what happens to them, what happens to the soul, the different stages that the soul goes through as it exits the world. We spent a very long discussion talking about the eternity of the soul, and death is only the animation of the body, but doesn't affect the stance and the standing of the soul. The soul was alive. The soul is always alive. But today we're going to now focus on the other side. We're going to focus on the mourner. We're going to focus on the loved one, on the family that's left behind, and we're going to discuss some very, very powerful questions. First of all, why do we mourn? I know it seems like a silly question, but we're going to discuss it. Why do we mourn? And why do some people mourn differently than others? So everyone reacts differently to loss. No two people are alike. No two situations are alike. And I mean, we're not going to read it inside, but you could take a look at text number 1, at text number 2 on page 84 and page 86, the two different articles. And I can post here. Here. I'm going to post an article in the chat. This is a synopsis from text number 2. I'm going to put the link to the article here in the chat, and you guys can read the full article from the New York Times article there. And we see you'll see in those articles that people react differently based on the situation. Everyone, no one is the same. So we have to understand why people react differently. At least give a general outline of why people react this way, and why we mourn, and why we said why we mourn and how to mourn. What's the proper way to mourn? What does Judaism say is a proper way to mourn, and how to deal with chronic grief or chronic mourning, and how to comfort and how to move forward. These are all things that we are going to discuss. And as always, as it is a sensitive topic, you're always welcome to interject with a question or a comment. You could type your question on the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. If you want to ask the question later after the lesson, you can do so. But we all benefit and gain when there's an interchange of ideas. Okay, so one thing is for sure, that when we lose a loved one, it hurts. It hurts a lot. There's a gaping hole, and we have to deal with that loss, and we have to talk about, because the Torah obviously has a view on everything that goes on in life, being that Hashem created us, and it says in the Midrash that Hashem looked in the Torah and created the world. This means the Torah covers all situations a man can be in, a person can be in, from conception until passing. So you can bet, and you can be sure that the Torah has what to say on how to properly experience grief and how to reemerge into life. So the lesson is going to cover these 3 general topics: the Torah's view on mourning and grief, the Torah's principles for dealing with chronic grief, and also for friends And family, what's the proper etiquette when visiting those who are grieving? Any question before we begin? No? Yes? Good? All right. It was pretty simple.
No question. The package was in the mailbox.
I'm sorry?
The package was left in the mailbox.
Yes, I know. Check your WhatsApp. But that nothing, guys, has nothing to do with this lesson. Totally.
Nothing at all to do with it, except I was expecting it to be left out by the front door, you know.
We'll file a complaint with Uber Eats. Okay. Let's go to page 80. There's a square which is going, the gray box, which is going to set the stage for what we are doing. Anyone want to read the gray box instead of me talking the whole time? Anyone? Can we have a volunteer to read the gray box on page 87? Anyone want to read the gray box on page 87? Do I have to pick on anybody? Anyone want to volunteer? Leon, would you like to read the gray box on page 87?
I don't see a gray box.
Mourning,
Oh, okay.
or maybe I got an earlier version. How is mourning viewed from a religious and philosophical perspective? You don't have that on page 87?
Yeah,
Yes.
we
Yeah.
do.
It's on page 87, yes.
Okay, Leon, go.
Go ahead. Okay, how is mourning viewed from a religious and or philosophical perspective? Is it an ideal or even appropriate response to death? Or is it an expression of weakness, an indication of lack of faith in God God's ever-present benevolence and justice? Most of us take for granted that mourning the passing of a loved one is both natural and wise, but there have been incredibly wise people who disagree with this assumption. This chapter will explore Judaism's unique position on grief and mourning. Why does Judaism consider such a response appropriate? To what degree does it embrace mourning? What exactly is the Jewish mourning process?
Okay, so let's ask, thank you very much, Leon. So let's ask a silly question. According to Jewish law and Jewish philosophy and theology, is mourning okay? Now, obviously, we know the answer just based on life experience, that the answer obviously is okay. But based on what we learned in the past few weeks about the eternity of a soul and how great it is up there, we would think that we should look forward to death. You know, there's a great joke told about this 85-year-old couple having been married for over 60 years. Though they unfortunately, tragically, they died in a car crash, but they were in great health because for the past 10 or 15 years, the wife kept a very strict, healthy diet. No oil, no fat, no salt, bran, no gluten. Everything was amazing. They were very good people. They come up to heaven, and in heaven, they bring him to this beautiful apartment, and a beautiful kitchen, and a jacuzzi. And the guy says, "Oh, I don't know, we can afford this." The angel says, "What are you talking about? This is heaven. It's all free." And then afterwards, he brings them out to a golf course, and every day it's a different golf course from around the world. So he says, "What are the green fees?" He said, "Fees? What are you talking about? This is heaven." And then he brings them to the cafeteria, and there's a smorgasbord with corned beef and ribs and muffins and bagels, and you bet it's all there. The guy's like, "Where's your gluten-free and fat-free options?" So gluten-free? What are you talking about? In heaven, you don't have to worry about it. Nothing's going to happen to you. He turns to his wife and says, "If not for your fakakta bran muffins, we could have been here 10 years ago." Right? So the question is, do we look forward to death? Because it would seem that why should we want to be here? Now, this theory, which I'm saying, is not so crazy. In fact, it's been put forward by some great philosophers. Look at text number 3. For those who was the famous Greek philosopher Socrates and Plato. Socrates was a person who questioned everything, questioned the status quo, he questioned government. he wasn't liked by the government. So they sentenced him to death. He had to drink some poison. And I think his official crime was he didn't believe in the gods of the state, in piety, I think it's called. Anyway, so the night before he was visited by some of his students, and look at the conversation in text number 3, page 87. And Cebis, I think it said it's pronounced Cebis. Please relate the following message to Evanus. This isn't Jack and John Smith over here. And bid him of good cheer. Say that I would have come after me by immediately leaving this world, if he be a wise man and not tarry, and that today I am likely to be going, for the Athenians say that I must. Simmias said, what a message for such a man. Having been a frequent companion of his, I should say, as far as I know him, he will never take your advice until he is obliged. Why, said Socrates, is not even a philosopher? I think that he is, said Simmias. Then he or any man or the spirit of philosophy will be willing to die, but he will not take his own life. Socrates believed that in the holiness of the soul, you can't take your own life. For that is unlawful. Socrates didn't believe in suicide. The day may come when you understand why, though a man is better dead, he is not permitted to be of his own benefactor, but must wait for the hand of another. So Socrates doesn't mourn death. Socrates looks forward to it. In fact, it says that he had the ability to escape. His students bribed the guard, but he said, "Why? Why should I escape? Why should I escape death? In fact, it's something to look forward to. I mean, you have to sort of look up to these people that they really did what they believed in." So Socrates says that we don't mourn death, and in fact, the soul is better. Does Judaism agree? So obviously, I think it's fairly obvious to say that Judaism doesn't only agree, Judaism vehemently agrees that we don't look forward to death. And not only because we don't look forward to death, not only are you allowed to mourn, it's actually a commandment. A person must mourn. It's mandatory to mourn. Look at text number 4. Text number 4 on page 88, Maimonides says, we are biblically commanded to mourn the death of our next of kin. So the question is why? Why do we have to mourn? If it's true that the soul is in a better place, right? In the Garden of Eden, it's in heaven. It's released from the shackles of the body, like Socrates understood it to be. Why should we mourn? So before we get into the why, let's look at one perspective. One perspective is, you see at text 5a, that not necessarily is it we have to mourn. It's just the natural order of things. God created the world, and God created man. And the way a human being is that we feel sad when there's loss. That's a natural reaction. Text 5a, Nachmanides says, the Torah does not forbid to weep because it's human nature to be moved to tears when separated from loved ones. So that's why it's human nature. You can't fight Mother Nature. That's just the way it is. But that's really an impulsive reaction. Let's look at text 5b on page 90. Maimonides says it's not just a natural reaction, an acknowledgement of the reality. It actually has psychological benefits. Because as you can see, Maimonides says, mourners find comfort in crying and in arousing their sorrow until their bodies are too weak to handle the intensity of their internal turmoil, just as happy individuals find contentment in various forms of lighthearted activities. So Maimonides is saying is it's cathartic to cry. Anyone notice the difference between, could point out a difference between text 5a and 5b? Anyone see anything?
Well, one refers to you can mourn because you're comforted by it. The other one says you're commanded.
Well, 5a doesn't say you're commanded.
4 is the one that says commanded.
Right, 4. It's in 5a and 5b. 5a says you may, if it happens to you, don't feel bad. 5b, it's a benefit, right? Serves a benefit, but there's more. So mourning is more than just a natural but useless reaction, and mourning is more than just a psychological benefit. Let's look at text 5c. The Radvaz has an extensive, David Ibn Zibra has an extensive book of questions that he received and the response. So in the question, we see that somebody, what is this, text 5c on page 91. The question is, one of the generation's greatest personalities failed to shed a single tear upon losing a son. The question is this a praiseworthy reaction? Would anybody like to read the answer? Elizabeth, you want to read the answer?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
such behavior is offensive and objectionable. It demonstrates heartlessness, distasteful character, and cruelty. This is the way of the philosophers who maintain that this world is without purpose. By contrast, we who have received the Torah are expected to believe and realize that this world is of great value for those who properly utilize their time here and behave appropriately. It is through our actions in this world that we merit the world to come. Crying, mourning, and shedding tears over the passing of a relative, and especially for an honorable individual, is the way of the pious, the prophets, and individuals renowned for their good deeds. It is not for naught that our sages instruct us to observe 3 days for weeping, 7 for eulogies, and 30 for restrictions on wearing new clothing and getting haircuts, etc. If weeping were improper, the sages would not have instituted a 3-day weeping period. In fact, the Torah emphasizes that our forefathers, Abraham, came to eulogize Sarah and weep for her. Genesis 23:2. And that Jacob, King David, and countless individuals of similar caliber acted likewise.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So what's 5c adding? What did 5c add that 5a and 5b didn't? So what's going on over here is it's not only a concession, because humans are frail to the human condition, and it's not that it's healing. We're saying over here is that because, like we learned in class 1 and class 2, that while the soul is holy, the soul can only accomplish down here in this world. The soul can only contribute to God's mission to make the world a godly place down here in this world. And like we're going to discuss in class 6, that one of the reasons behind the belief in the resurrection of the dead is because the ultimate is the soul in the body. So the reason why mourning is appropriate is because there was the tremendous loss here. The loss is the losing of opportunity. This person gets to contribute to God's mission. Here, a family member was a close comrade in fulfilling God's mission, in contributing holiness into the world, making the world a good place and a godly place. And now that person, that contributor, is missing, and that is sad. We're mourning the loss of opportunity, and that's worth something to cry about. So a person who says, "Oh, I'm too manly," real men don't cry. The Radvaz says it very clearly that is the disgusting, terrible behavior, and it's not praiseworthy at all. So the Torah philosophy is the purpose for all creation is for a person to be down here, and when that doesn't happen, then we are sad. Now, who are we sad for? You see, text 3.1 on page 92. We said before, Maimonides says next of kin. Who is next of kin? So there are your parents, your siblings, and your spouse, and your children. These are the people that a person must mourn for. Any questions before we go on? Yay, nay?
No questions.
So far, so good. Okay. So now that we discussed the why we have to mourn, well, because it's natural to mourn, and we have to mourn because it helps us heal, and we mourn because it goes. So, I don't think I fully expanded on the point. When we mourn because because of the loss of opportunity, it really goes back to our belief in why God created the world. It's not just a loss for a good person. God created the world to fulfill a mission. So when we mourn the loss of that missing participant, it goes back to our belief in the reason why God created the world in the first place. So it serves a very big purpose. So we discussed the why. Now let's get into the how. Okay. In order to go through the how, we have to go through the different stages of mourning, like this. The first stage of mourning, a person is called an onain. And the onain, this is in your books as well. It's going to be on your screen. This is figure 3.2. We're going to go through it on the screen as well. An onain is a person whose loved one has passed and is yet to be buried. The laws of an onain are that they do not do any mitzvahs because this is the most intense period of grief. They can't even fathom moving on. So therefore, they don't do any mitzvahs. They don't put on tefillin, or make a bracha. They don't say Shema. I mean, we're talking about the positive mitzvahs, the to-do mitzvahs. They don't do any of the to-do mitzvahs. They obviously have to refrain from the negative commandments, and they're not allowed to do anything to distract them from their grief and their pain. They're busy making funeral arrangements for the loved one, and for any friends or family, this is not the time to mourn them. So they're absolved from mitzvahs, and the immediate family, like we saw in figure 3.1 on page 92, the immediate family defined as parents, spouse, sibling, and children, they tear their garment at some point of aninus. Okay, any questions? Again, what I'm just doing now is giving a brief overview. The laws of mourning are lengthy, and every situation has different details. This is just a brief overview. Obviously, if someone has a question, you can ask me afterwards. All right? I mean, in a particular situation. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, I don't understand. What is aninut? Is in Hebrew?
Yes. Yes. I mean, what is the translation of the word onain? Because Avel is mourner and onain is also a mourner. It's a different type of mourner. They're both translated in English as mourner, but different. One is before, an onain is before the loved one is buried, and an Avel is after. Maybe I guess I can look up if there's a different translation. I don't know if English has, I don't know if in English there's different words for different translations for a loved one, a family member, before and after interment. Okay. Now, by the way, there are certain mitzvahs we're not allowed to do but owning. For example, in the temple times, there was a mitzvah to bring the first fruit to the temple. And when we brought the first fruit, bikurim, is actually, there was a declaration that says, le'echalti mimenu ba'oini. I did not eat it as an onain. When a person's an onain, they're totally consumed. They cannot do anything else. Okay. The next step is, I think I skipped one. Where's happened to Shiva? Okay. All right. I guess. All right. So Shiva, well, Shiva and Shloshim are kind of, Shiva is part of the Shloshim, and the customs for Shiva we're going to do a little bit later. But in the Shloshim, in the 30-day period, you're not allowed to buy new clothes, you can't take your haircuts, and you can't go to any parties. The 12 months, and this is only for a parent. I was reading why 12 months for a parent. It says actually not because the sadness is more, sadness is less, it has more to do with kibbut ava'im, respect for a parent. So 12 months of mourning. So some shloshim restrictions continue, like you can't go to parties, live music, and there's a custom to keep a candle burning for the 12 months. This is the how. All right, any questions before we move on? All right, let's go through.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so let's say that you're sitting Shiva. This is during a Shiva period.
Yeah.
And a kin of the person who has passed away has a wedding of a daughter. Is that allowed?
No. People are sitting Shiva can't go to weddings.
Even though it's your own child that's getting married?
Yeah. No. So what you do is the children would push off the wedding.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, yes, this is, yeah, they would have, so there've been stories. There was a story where parents died on the day of the wedding. And the couple gets married because you don't push it off. And then, yeah, the crazy stories. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Again, that's why I said there are always particular circumstances. So if a wedding is scheduled and the parent dies, and yeah, so you push it off until after the show.
Okay, thank you.
Now, normally, Jewish tradition, we're very, very reticent to push off a wedding date. But the thing is, the child who's in a state of mourning cannot just cast off his mourning and be happy. However, if he hasn't started mourning yet, he can get married and delay. Does that make sense?
How do you postpone your own mourning?
So mourning doesn't begin until the burial. Official mourning. Shiva doesn't begin until the burial.
Okay.
So I know there was a case, or one or two cases like this, where the parent died on the day of the wedding. So they had to, I think, get married. Try to remember. I mean, obviously, this is a very infrequent case. That you get married, and what they did for Shiva, I don't remember, but it's happened a few times that the parent died in the Shiva brachas, the week of festivities after the wedding. So yeah, it's a whole different thing. But again, this is only general guidelines. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So now there's a whole long figure 3.3, 3.4, and I'm going to summarize it. But basically, there's this big professor in Israel. His name is Dr. Chaim Rubin, and he did a study. And the study was, he says that psychology basically talks. Oh, sorry, the yard site. I forgot the yard site. Back the yard site anniversary. We say Kaddish. All right. We study additional Torah. I forgot about the yard site. Okay. So he did a study. He said modern psychology talks about there are two different tracks. He called it two different tracks of bereavement, of mourning, and it all depends on it all depends on how close the person is. So how close the person is will testify on the ability to re-engage in your job, to re-engage with other people in your family, and based on the second one is based on how close the person is. That is also going to talk about how the person mourns. The more distant, the less mourning. And he goes through it and he combines it. You're welcome to look at it for the sake of time. You could look at 3.4. Figure 3.4 on page 96. Basically, this is the conclusion of this Dr. Rubin's study. And what he says over there is that the 5 stages the Jewish tradition laid out way back when, like we've discovered so many times before, that modern day psychology, all their innovations has been implemented in the Torah, and Jewish practice has been espousing these theories and these practices for thousands of years. So you see over here that and only minimal function, the person is consumed, and the relationship, because he's so close, you can look it over. It's very interesting to see. All right, so I want to get into really the practice of mourning. What is a loved one supposed to do? The first thing a loved one is supposed to do, as we said in the figure on what is it? The figure 3.2. Oh, it was in the slideshow. Was the immediate mourner, next of kin, has to tear kriya. Tear kriya means you rent. The mourner rents their clothing. Why is that important? Now, this is very important. What I'm saying now, because Norman Lamb. Anyone ever heard of Rabbi Norman Lamb?
No.
Yes, no? There's a book called The Jewish Way of Death and Mourning. A lot of people have this book. I think Norman Lamb was the head of the Shiva University. As a famous brother, Maurice Lamb, two very famous rabbis. And he writes over there like this. I'm going to read to you. I have it over here printed out. The Jewish Way in Death and Mourning. It's 3 paragraphs, so allow me to read it for you. The grief we express at such moments, the kriya, taps the deepest wells of our humanity, and the manner in which we manifest it should be equally authentic. The anguish is exquisite, and one might even say sacred. And the way in which we express it should be no less sacred. It is appropriate that this form of release of sorrow be sanctioned by faith and by centuries of ancient custom, going back to biblical times. How shallow, how disappointing, how pitiably trivial, therefore, to symbolize these authentic sentiments, not by an act of historical and religious significance, but by the little black ribbon or button invented by enterprising American undertakers. Tradition calls us to tear our garments, to put the mark of a broken heart on our own clothing, and not to vent our feelings on meaningless and impersonable strip of cloth pinned on us by a stranger. Nevertheless, if for some reason the ribbon has been used at a funeral service, the mourner should make a tear in the proper clothing upon his return home. The ribbon does not qualify. what is the point of Kriya? Why does the Torah say that the next of kin has to tear his clothing? Because the first step is a person has to, before you get to shiva, the person has to accept reality. That is the first step in moving forward. Person has to accept what happened. If a person doesn't accept it, they can't move forward. You might ask me, how do you know that we have to do Kriya? Look at text number 6. You see text number 6, when Jacob thought that Joseph died, was killed by a wild animal. We have over here a biblical source. This is only one biblical source. We could have put more biblical sources in there. That upon the death of a loved one, the tearing of clothing is done. So it's not only that the person should tear clothing, it's tearing in public, because when a person tears in public, because the first thing a person wants to do when tragedy strikes is say, oh my God, no, it didn't happen. It can't be true. And that's not unhealthy, because the reality is it did happen. It did happen. And when a person tears Kriya, it's a tangible and inescapable physical expression of loss. And when you do it in public, it's even a deeper expression of sorrow. Look at text number 7. Rabbi Shua Yash lived in the 1700s from Sephardic rabbi from Algiers. And he says, the goal, towards the end of the paragraph, the goal is to actively encourage the mourners to express their pain over the passing and to experience their tremendous loss. When a person loses a loved one, you have to experience loss. Why is it so important to experience loss? Because mourning is a process. And if we don't begin the process, you'll never move on. You'll never get back sort of to normal life. And I don't want to use that because I don't like that. So in the beginning, person is so numb, and the person has to come to terms. Because what happens if the person doesn't deal with the loss or gets over it too early, too quickly? Psychology says that when something so powerful happens, it stays with you. If you don't deal with it, it's going to come back to bite you. A person has to deal with that loss. The Torah is saying, deal with it now. Deal with it immediately. Because otherwise, you can never move on and learn to live this new chapter in your life, the one without your loved one, if you don't deal with the loss the way it is now. That is the way. So the Torah is telling you, this is the way to deal with it. There's an old joke of this, talking about a person moving on too quick. So I heard this joke back when the show, The Producers was famous. So, the Producers was a very famous, I don't know, is it still on Broadway? I don't know. Is it? Yes, no? All right. So, what?
I don't think it's on Broadway now.
Well, I don't think anything's on Broadway now.
There you go.
Anyway, so there's a time where you couldn't get a ticket. It was packed. So this couple goes and they're sitting in the second row. And they see right in the front row. There's a woman sitting there, an empty seat next to her. So the whole place is packed. The woman leans over, taps an elderly woman sitting in front of her and says, "Excuse me." Says, "I don't understand." Says, "What's going on? What's with the empty seat? The whole place is packed." "Oh, me and my husband Irving, you bought tickets to the show and a long time ago. So she asks, so where's your husband Irving? Passed away. So she says, I'm so sorry you lost your husband. She says, but couldn't you find a friend or a loved one to come with you? Where are all your friends? They're at the shiva. Right? I'm not gonna miss the show. So, but the Torah says, in all seriousness, the Torah says that it's a tangible reality, and we need to fully accept it. And when a person does kriya, that is the first step in healing. Okay. Let's talk about what the Torah says, the process, I guess we'll call it the timetable in healing. Before we go on page 99, anyone have any questions?
No.
Yes? Okay. All right, Michael J, since you're chiming in, read page 99. Finding comfort. Yes, the Jewish way of mourning. Yes, got it.
No. Oh, hold on. All right. Yeah. The Jewish way of mourning is designed to induce a gradual but progressive emergence into normal society and function. At every step of the way, the mourner needs to focus their energies on processing where they are and then moving on to the next reduced stage of mourning.
Okay. Mourning takes time. Mourning is healing, and healing takes time. So you have to start, and then the person has to move on in stages. There's a very powerful Gemara. See on page text 8. This is page 99. The Gemara says we're supposed to mourn. The second paragraph, how we expected to act: 3 days for weeping, 7 for eulogies, 30 days for 30 days for restrictions. Now, once this elapses, God says, "Okay, now it's time to move on." No one's telling you. That's it. After Shiva, you're not allowed to mourn anymore. You can't feel sad anymore. Everybody's different. We spoke about that earlier. What Judaism is saying is this is an ideal. This is what we should be striving for. There's a story. There was a chassid that lost his daughter right before Bas Mitzvah, and he was totally devastated. He couldn't get over it. And one time, Mendel Futterfass, you've heard me speak about him before, famous Russian chassid who had a life full of tragedy, buried some of his own children, and he took the man in his hands, and he started crying, and he said, even if you're a great scholar and you understand many great things, at some point, he tells him, we'll never truly understand why things happen. You just have to believe that things come from a compassionate God. Fact of the matter is that these are not rules, but they're guidelines. And no one's going to tell you, or to tell the loved one to get over it, move on, stop feeling bad for yourself. God forbid. What we're trying to say over here is that we have to recognize that we have to try to heal, to move on, and to kind of live a life a little bit differently. There's a very, very moving text. I want you to look at Appendix A, which is towards the end of the lesson. At the end of the lesson, it's page 115. It's quite a moving text. It's very long. If someone wants to read it, if not, I'll read it. I don't want to read it.
I'll read.
Go ahead.
Editor's note on May 13th, 2011, someone posted on Reddit. facebook.com. My friend just died. I don't know what to do. The following poignant response penned by G. Snow has since gone viral. All right, here goes. I'm old. What that means is that I've survived so far, and a lot of people I've known and loved did not. I lost friends, best friends, acquaintances, co-workers, grandparents, mom, relatives, teachers, mentors, students, neighbors, and a host of other folks. I have no children. I can't imagine the pain it would be to lose a child, but here's my 2 cents. I wish I could say you get used to people dying. I never did. I don't want to. It tears a hole in me whenever somebody I love dies, no matter the circumstance. But I don't want it to not matter. I don't want it to be something that just passes. My scars are a testament to the love and the relationship that I had for and with that person. So if the scar is deep and so is the love, so be it. Scars are a testament to life. Scars are a testament that I can love deeply and live deeply and be cut or even gouged, and that I can heal and continue to live and continue to love. And the scar tissue is stronger than the original flesh ever was. Scars are a testament to life. Scars are only ugly to people who can't see. Do you want me to continue? Continue. As for grief, you will find it comes in waves. When the ship is first wrecked, you're drowning with wreckage all around you. Everything floating around you reminds you of the beauty and the magnificence of the ship that was, and it is no more. And all you can do is float. You can find some piece of the wreckage and you can hang on for a while. Maybe it's something, it's a physical thing. Maybe it's a happy memory or a photograph. Maybe it's a person who's also floating. For a while, that's all you can do, float, stay alive. In the beginning, the waves are 100 feet tall and crash over you without mercy. Then they come 10 seconds apart and don't even give you time to catch your breath. All you can do is hang on and float. After a while, maybe weeks, maybe months, you can find the waves are still 100 feet tall, but they come further apart. And when they come, they crash over you and wipe you out. But in between, you can breathe, you can function. You never know what's going to trigger the grief. It might be a song, a picture, a street intersection, the smell of a cup of coffee. It could be just about anything, and the wave comes crashing. But in between waves, there's life. Somewhere down in the line, it is difficult for everyone to find that the waves are only 80 feet tall or 50 feet tall. And while they still come, they come further apart. You can see them coming, an anniversary, a birthday, Christmas, or landing at O'Hare. You can see it coming for the most part and prepare yourself. And it washes over you and you know that somehow you will begin again, come out the other side, soaking wet, sputtering, but still hanging on to some tiny piece of the wreckage, but you'll come out. Take it from the old guy, the waves never stop coming. And sometimes you really don't want them to, but you learn that you'll survive and others' waves will come and you'll survive them too. If you're lucky, you'll have lots of scars from lots of loves and lots of shipwrecks.
I find that the last line, if you're lucky, you'll have lots of scars from lots of love. I think it's a very powerful line. It means if you have hurt in your life, it means you've loved. Anyone who doesn't have hurt in life means, you know, they don't have love in their life, because to love someone means you're vulnerable to get hurt. And when someone loses a loved one, it hurts terribly. So the question is how to find comfort. How do we find comfort? So let's look at the custom by Ashkenazic Jews on text 9a, going back to page 100. The custom by Ashkenazic Jews is when we leave a shiva, we say Amoko Minachem Eschem, the omnipresent God can console you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Any questions on this line? Any questions? You can type it, you can say it. Anyone have any questions on this line?
I question by myself, where is find this is a bracha, is a what is mean? Is only a consolation or is a bracha?
No, it's a consolation. This is something we say to those who are sitting shiva.
Yeah, but this is inside what book? Who is a tradition? Is something?
Yeah, a tradition to say it. Who authored it? I don't know. You know, that's a good question. I never thought of it. I don't know. It's just something we just say. Let me. I don't know. You know something? I'm gonna write it down. Esther, that's a great question. You know something? I'm going to find out. All right, I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna try to look it up. Ask around. You know, I don't know. Just printed everywhere. I don't know. It's from the Gemara. I don't know who. But anyway, so let's analyze the text over here. Okay. It says here, you go to somebody, you're a friend, you're a family member, and you say, "May God comfort you." What do you mean, may God comfort you? I'm comforting you. Why do we say, "May God comfort you"? Question. The answer number one is because the ability for comfort comes from God. God is the one. Only God heals. It's a saying that time heals. The way Hashem created the world is that with time, scars, wounds heal. You know, it's interesting. Going back to this, we read the text of Jacob and Joseph. It says that Jacob mourned for Joseph for 22 years. Why did he mourn for 22 years? Because it's explained because Joseph was never dead. And it says that way, it explains in the Midrash that the way Hashem created us is we can only truly mourn and heal over someone that's passed. But if someone is still alive, we can't mourn over them because the person is alive. True healing. So we're trying to tell the person that Hashem heals. And yes, you're going through pain, but Hashem is going to heal. Number two, this is very, very powerful. Text 9b. We say over here, may God comfort you with the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Why do you think this guy sitting shiva over his loved one cares about Zion and Jerusalem? What does one thing got to do with the other? So the Rebbe wrote a letter to Ariel Sharon, 1967. Ariel Sharon's son, I think his name was Gur, found a gun and it accidentally went off and he died. Ariel Sharon was a famous general from the 6-Day War. And so the Rebbe penned him a letter. This is an excerpt of the letter. And he says like this. He says something very, very powerful. He says, we know as Jewish people, the Romans and Babylonians, they were only able to destroy the building. The fact that, 1967, you listen to the radio broadcast, it says, Yerushalayim bi'adenu, Yerushalayim's in our hands, and everybody was crying, religious, not religious, everybody was crying when they saw the Kosel for the first time. Why? Because we understand that while the building is not there, but the holiness is indestructible. The meaning of what it is indestructible. The same thing is over here. We're telling the person. This is text 9b. He says, the nations have no dominion and stand eternally. So too regarding the mourning of the individual. Death dominates only the physical body and concerns of the deceased person. The soul, however, is eternal and has merely ascended to the world of truth. You remember the meditation we did last week, Rabbi Shais Taub, about the second floor. The soul is indestructible. The soul is never demolished. The soul never, the soul never, never dies. So the same thing is for Zion. This is what we're trying. The message we're trying to send to the mourner. May God, the ultimate healer, comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, who, yes, we mourn the physical destruction of the building, but the holiness, the specialness of your loved one lives on, just as the holiness in Jerusalem lives on. Let's watch a meditation, Rabbi Shais Taub, which stresses this point.
Today's reflection is going to involve an image which all of us probably have an immediate and strong reaction to. It is an icon for Jewish people all over the world and throughout the ages. An image that when we see it, we have a very strong and almost reflex response. I'm speaking of the image of the Western Wall, the only remaining vestige of the once glorious Holy Temple which stood in Jerusalem and was destroyed 2,000 years ago. We're going to use this image to help us in relating to our understanding of our relationship with those who have passed on. So imagine, if you will, in your mind's eye, the image of the temple, the glorious temple as it stood, as it was built by Solomon in its royal splendor, something that was revered by peoples all over the world. And now, juxtapose that glorious image with the image of the Western Wall as it stands now and has stood for 2,000 years in its destroyed state. Go back and forth between these two images. The temple as it stood in its glory, and the temple in ruins when we only have the Western Wall. The Western Wall is a symbol of destruction. The temple is no more. And yet, think about the hope, the strength, the inspiration, the spiritual and emotional energy that emanates from that image, even when the temple is in its destroyed state. Now think about a loved one who has passed on. Think about them when they were here with us in the physical world. Think about the situation at present when their physical body is no more. Are they really gone? Have they really lost their influence and power in your life? Or are they like the Western Wall? The Western Wall is an image of destruction, and yet the Western Wall is a symbol of inspiration and hope, pride, powerful, powerful emotions. Think of this image. Think of the feelings that it evokes in you. And now relate this as a symbol to those who are currently, physically, their vessel has been destroyed, but spiritually, their power is as great as ever. We'll take a moment now to reflect and to connect to this image and to relate it to our loved ones.
I think it was very, very powerful what Rabbi Shais Tab was saying. And he's saying here is that although, a person, loved one passing is a symbol of loss and destruction, it's also a sign of connection and inspiration. I want to share with you one more point about Kriya, because, unfortunately, as a rabbi officiating funerals, I see this a lot with the rabbin, and it's very unfortunate that people think, oh, what's the big deal? Kriya is not just a ritual that we do. Kriya really goes, renting our clothing really goes to the belief in the eternity of the soul. Look at text 10 on page 102. Rabbi Aaron Moss Aquinas. Anyone volunteer to read page text 10? Barbara, Larry. Text 10.
Want to do it, Barbara?
I have to move.
Oops, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear the word. Okay. Often within their the mourners have an underlying belief that it isn't true, that their loved one hasn't really gone. This is not just denial. In a way, they are right. Death is not an absolute reality. Our souls existed before we were born, and they continue to exist after we die. The souls that have passed on are still with us. We can't see them, but we sense they are there. We can't hear them, but we know that they hear us. On the surface, we are apart. Beyond the surface, nothing can separate us. So we tear our garments. This has a dual symbolism. We are recognizing the loss that our hearts are torn. But ultimately, the body is also only a garment that the soul wears. Death is when we strip off one uniform and take on another. The garment may be torn, but the essence of the person within it is still intact. From our worldly perspective, death is indeed a tragedy, and the sorrow experienced by the mourners is real. But as they tear their garments, we hope that within their pain, they can sense a glimmer of a deeper truth, that souls never die.
Thank you very much. Again, it's very, very powerful words. By tearing the garment, the expression of next of kin is that we can never destroy the eternity of the soul. Okay, let's move on. We spoke about what should be done. But what happens if a person is having a hard time? Rabbi, thank you very much in the idea. You know, they tell an old story that says it's true. There's an old French guy, Charles something, that he would walk. He did a lot of shtick. He walked across his name was Charles Blondin. He walked across Niagara Falls on a tightrope, and he walked across with an empty wheelbarrow, and everybody cheered for him. And he did all these different tricks. And finally, he said, "Who believes that I can walk across the Niagara Falls with a blindfold on?" He did it. "Who believes I can walk with a blindfold on and a wheelbarrow?" And he did it. And who believes I can walk across the Niagara Falls with a blindfold, a wheelbarrow, and with a person? And everyone said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then he said, "Who's going to volunteer?" Silence, right? So it's very nice to have these ideas. But what happens if the person is stuck in grief? They can't, they're stuck. They can't move on. What does the Torah say? How do we help a person that has moved on? So first thing we got to do is we got to analyze pain. Usually when we think about death and loss and hurt and pain, we think these are the emotions that you see on your screen that come up. It's not fear. You get angry, depressed, you deny. It's depression. Let's go through these, hopefully one at a time, and we'll see what the Torah says about it. And maybe what we've learned here the past few weeks, it can help us to approach it. So many times when someone passes away, there could be the feeling of injustice. So let's take a scenario. Scenario A, a 95-year-old Baba passes away in her sleep. Scenario B, 20-year-old passes after a difficult battle against leukemia. What are the different reactions to these two scenarios? Nope.
You feel lost with both, but it just seems wrong that somebody who is so young dies.
Right. So the first one, we can say, listen, we obviously there's a loss. The person who had so much influence in our life is not here, but 95 years old, and we celebrate the person's life. But when a person dies young, it just feels wrong. It's not the way it's supposed to be. You feel cheated almost. That we thought the person was going to grow up to be A, B, grow old to be A, B, and C. It didn't happen. Or why did the person deserve it? Or why did the person die young? So our anger, our pain turns to anger, and we want answers. So I'm going to share with you. Text 11 is a very, very long text, and I'm going to just paraphrase it. You can read it. And while you're reading it, I'm going to paraphrase what it says. Yochanan ben Zakkai, just to give you a little preview who he was. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the lead rabbi at the destruction of the Second Temple. The family of Hillel had to go into hiding. The Romans wanted to kill the Davidic family. Hillel was from the family of King David. So Yochanan ben Zakkai stepped in, and he was the leader of the Jewish people at some of the worst times. Many times we think the Holocaust was the worst time in Jewish history, but you look at Jewish history and you have some pretty stiff competition. The destruction of the Second Temple, Judaism, the Jewish people was almost at the brink of annihilation. It was that bad, really, really bad. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saw literally millions of Jews slaughtered. So I want to say, he witnessed the fall of Beitar. It says the Romans killed so many Jews, the Mediterranean was stained red from blood. The Romans killed so many Jews in Jerusalem, there was blood up to the horses' knees, whatever it is. I'm telling you, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai witnessed tragedy, he witnessed suffering, he witnessed loss. So I just want to give a background of, it's not like he lived a sheltered life. It's interesting that when he lost his son, who was a great man, he was inconsolable. He couldn't get over it. So out of the thousands of students Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had, he had 5 of the best, and actually brought them in Pirkei Avos. And each one came and they tried to comfort him. So one rabbi said, Adam and Chava, they had children. They lost a child. So he said, "Wait, you trying to help me?" Now I'm sad for them. But Rabbi Shua said, Job lost children. He said, "Well, you're not making it better. Now you're making me it's even worse." And Rabbi Yossi said, Aaron had 2 illustrious children out of an Avihu. They died, and he said, "You're not making it better. Now you're making me pain for Aaron as well." And Shimon said, King David had the same thing. And when Elazar ben Aruch, we're going to read the last 3 paragraphs out loud. Elazar entered, sat before Rabbi Yochanan, and told him, "Let me share with you a parable." Let me share with you a parable. And he said like this: your situation is similar to that of an individual whom the king entrusted an article for safekeeping. Each day, the man would weep and was so worried. Woe is to me, when will I emerge unharmed from the safekeeping role? You, Master Rabbi Yochanan, also had a son. He was fluent in Torah, prophets, scripture, Mishnah, halacha, and all the midrash. And he passed from this world without sin. You should certainly accept consolation, for you have returned your deposit in perfect condition. Yochanan responded, Rabbi Elazar, my son, you have comforted me in the most humane fashion. Let's look at the questions on page 107, because this is important. Why did Rabbi Yochanan fail to find comfort in the words of the first 4 rabbis? And why was he consoled by Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch? Guys, what do you think? Chime in. What was wrong with the first one?
They're all negative except for the last one. The last one pushed positive information.
Okay? Okay,
Relating to somebody else's loss doesn't change your own loss.
yeah, everyone's different. Right?
Recognizing how great your child was gives you at least some pride, some remembrance of the positive.
Right. Right. So, I didn't read text number 1, text number 2, but in text number 1, the woman loses her husband. Text number 2, I think a woman loses her son or husband. I don't remember. You can't go to a person and say, oh, because that person felt that way, you too should also feel that way. You can't command someone to love, someone to feel. If a person feels more pain, they do. If a person doesn't, they don't. So to say to somebody, because Adam was comforted at the loss of his child, therefore you should too, that's not an argument. Everyone is different. And second of all, like Larry pointed out, the first 4 didn't offer any pathway towards healing, didn't offer any pathway towards comfort. They just stated a fact that they did it. Okay, thank you. Now what should I do? Thank you for telling me a story. The question is, how does it help me? Rabbi Elazar acknowledges that everyone is different. Yes, it's true they comforted, but you specifically, Rechon ben Zakkai. He says, how are you going to be comforted? So he tells him something very, very powerful. And he makes 2 points. Number 1, and this is a very important lesson we have to remember every day, and we do this by saying my da'ani, which is actually really number 2. Number 1, Rabbi Elazar tells us is don't compare losses, right? Your loss doesn't make me feel better. Okay. Lesson number 2. You don't own, anything. Meaning every moment you have in this world is a gift. Every person is created with 0. Every moment we have in this life is given to us by God. It's a deposit. God is lending it to you, giving it to you, and he can take it at any point. So this whole feeling of injustice is based on what you assumed would be. Every single moment is a gift. There's an old saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Sometimes we lose focus of just how precious time is, and we waste it, and we have all these things that we'd like to do. So whatever time a person is given, whether it's 20 years, whether it's 2 years, or 120 years, that is the time that Hashem has given. So we sometimes look at time as something that belongs to us, or it's something we inherently deserve. So we feel cheated and robbed by the death of something that we thought was rightfully ours. Rabbi Elazar is telling us that is not true. We say by a funeral, Hashem gives and Hashem takes. That is just the reality. Number 2. Hashem creates every person for a reason. And every person is given a time allotment to fulfill this reason. People don't die before their time. The question is, do you maximize your time? Rabbi Elazar is telling Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, your son was one of the few people that maximized his time. Now, the Gemara says something that no matter how low you may think of a person, every Jew is filled with mitzvot, like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. No life is left unfulfilled. So what Rabbi Lazar is telling Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is, yes, it hurts, but you have to realize that your son completed his message, his mission, and when the mission is finished, the deposit is taken back. So yes, it hurts, and yes, it hurts more when a person passes away. But this helps to alleviate some of the feelings of injustice. Any questions before we move on to the next feeling?
No question.
So now I just want to point out, it doesn't mean that, by the way, that there is no added pain when someone passes away early. It actually, when a person passes away early, or young, I should say, better words, when a person passes away young, many people put on the tombstone, it'll say, Nitkaf bidmei yamav, cut off in the days, in the days of his youth, because it does hurt more. But what we're saying here, it helps to alleviate some of these emotions. I'm going to post an article. Hold on here. Is the one? Yes, this is an article from the Washington Post, talking about feelings of rage and injustice. Very, very interesting article. I'm posting it on the chat, and you're welcome to read it. And it says over here, I'm going to read a part of it, is that not all events are created equal, says Roxanne Cohen Silver. Individuals and communities tend to experience more negative consequence and have an equally hard time recovering from man-made disasters like terrorist attacks. You know, when something happens, when it's unjust, you want to blame someone. It's a very interesting article. I see you're welcome to read it. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Right. I have a question.
Sure.
Who has the mitzvot? The person or the soul?
The soul in the body. A soul by itself has no commandments. It has no way to fulfill the commandments. And a body without soul is just a lump of a clay. So it's the soul in the body that has the mitzvah.
So, if I understand, that soul has a specific mission in the earth,
yes,
in the world. So when this person die, his soul, I supposed to completely that soul finished his mission in the earth. So, but he is still alive because the soul never finished. So, in another conclusion, every time the soul have a new mission in a new body.
Okay, so you're getting into reincarnation, not this class. That's next class. Reincarnation is next class.
Oh.
No, sorry. Lesson 5. Lesson 5 is what's called. We'll discuss reincarnation. That's a very interesting topic, and we're gonna spend a long time talking about reincarnation. Okay, because yes, it's a fascinating topic.
Sorry, Rabbi.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Because we don't have time to cover it. Well, it's late, man. Ooh. Okay. Let's go through. Okay. Another feeling that many people have is guilt. Common feeling is guilt. You know, a person passes away and you start thinking, why did I say that? Why did I do that? If only I was better to them. I wish I would have visited them more often. I would have called more often. It says, and the truth is, why don't we think about it now? Why don't, because now we think, I always have time to make things right. But now, oh my God, it's over. That's it. The person has passed. There's nothing I can do. But based on what we learn, that the soul is eternal and death doesn't terminate the relationship. In fact, it enhances the relationship. The difference is that now, it was Valentine's Day. Was a Sunday, so I went to Publix to buy bagels for the morning minion, and everyone's buying flowers and chocolate, and that's the way Hallmark decided you have to express your love. It's the biggest nonsense and load of garbage in the world. I just hope anyone who has stocks in Walmart in Hallmark made a lot of money. Anyway, but the point is that there's a way to express. So even if there's a feelings. There's feelings of guilt. Oh, why didn't I do it before? You can still connect. Look at text number 12. Reb Aaron of Kalin, a colleague of the Mittel Rebbe, second Chabad Rebbe, and also the Alter Rebbe says there's ways to connect. Look at text number 12. Very interesting. When children say Kaddish, that's regards. When you learn Mishnah, it's like sending a letter. And when you do a mitzvah, it's like sending a care package. We have to get out of the mindset that now, if I want to do something for Larry, I'll send him kishka. Right? I love Larry. Larry loves kishka. I'm going to send him kishka. You try to send an neshama kishka, he's not going to appreciate it. You got to send things that the neshama will understand. So there's no reason to feel guilt. You always have an opportunity to connect. Okay. Any questions before we move on? All right. Good. Let's talk about the Shiva house. I know it's nearing the end of the class. Let's talk about the Shiva house and how we are supposed to act. Now, if you speak to many people, they kind of want to, stay away from the Shiva house because, what do I do? What do I say? What do I do? What do I say? But however, Shiva is a very, very, very important part of healing for the loved ones. We're going to watch a short video, and it talks about the benefits, the therapeutic benefits of Shiva. Here we go. Oh, sorry. One minute.
When a loved one passes away, Jewish law calls upon the immediate family to experience the rite of Shiva. Approximately 7 days are spent in mourning and receiving comfort from visitors. A doctor, a rabbi, and an acclaimed lecturer offer personal reflections on the rite of Shiva.
When someone dies, the relationship with the deceased doesn't end. The relationship with the person who died continues. It just changes from a face-to-face interpersonal relationship to a relationship of memories to a relationship of legacies. By engaging the mourners in this process, you're helping them make that shift.
The purpose of Shiva is meant for the mourner to be able to take that time aside from the affairs of life and affairs of the world, to contemplate, to introspect, and to share with others the life they had, with the person they loved. People come to visit and console and try to bring comfort to the mourner.
The structure of it and the formality of it, it gives a sense of relief. When you're grieving, it's very all over the place, very hard to contain. And the structure of the Shiva brings a relief and a sense of conformity, which is quite redeeming.
If you want to help comfort the griever, what you're in essence doing by taking an interest in the person who's died is helping that person preserve his life.
I remember hearing people say things to me that was almost like they said it and the words stopped right here. But days and weeks and months later, they slowly made their way in.
The point of the Shiva is not to come up with anything brilliantly comforting to say, because there really isn't anything to say. Rather, it's just simply to be there.
One person who lost a toddler under very, very tragic circumstances told me what was the most comforting visit all week. And I'll say it the way he said it. He said an older gentleman with a lot of life experience came in. He said he sat in front of him and he asked to see a picture of his daughter. He gave him the picture. He looked at the picture. He cried for 10 minutes straight. He gave the picture back. He said the traditional verse that you say as you leave, and that was it. And he said that was, without a doubt, the most comforting visit.
But in retrospect, I have to say that that week of the passage between one reality and the next reality, somehow I have to believe in His infinite wisdom, God saw to it that this passage not be taken alone, even while feeling lonely.
Take on a mitzvah. Do something, and it can be tiny, but I'm going to do it in memory of this person, and especially if it fits with that person. That's comforting. Now the world's a slightly better place because of that person.
Okay, so let's go through some of the do's and don'ts when we go, because it's important, because a lot of us are kind of hesitant to go to a shiva house because we don't want to say the wrong thing, so we'll avoid it. That's first of all the biggest no. But let's do what the yeses, and then we'll do what the no's. Okay, so what do? We cover the mirrors. Again, we don't have really time to discuss the why. I'm posting an interesting link here, which is a very interesting idea on why we cover the mirrors. And so we cover the mirrors. These are the laws and tradition. The person has to remain in the house of mourning, preferably in the house where the person lived. The mourners have to sit on low stools. They can't wear leather footwear. They can't listen to music, watch TV, anything like that. Can't shave or haircuts. They're not allowed to work. They can't. You can't distract yourself. A person has to deal with the reality we said before. You can't avoid. You cannot. learn Torah, because Torah brings joy. You cannot. Only limited amount. The bathing and laundry, and then we pray in the home, and obviously we have to visit the mourners, and you see over here, text 13, Maimonides says it's a mitzvah to visit the mourners, and this falls under the purview of you shall love your fellow as yourself. The worst thing a person can do is to not call, not visit, because when the person doesn't call, the mourner thinks the person is indifferent, and that is the worst thing to do. And sometimes you say, oh, but I don't know if I'm going to go. You see the question that you usually you see it. Look at page 111. These are questions people usually ask themselves. I'm going to go. I'm uncomfortable. What do I do? And and what do I say? So first of all, just by being there, it's comforting. You see text number 14. The Gemara says, just being there, silent. You don't have to say anything. Just being there, letting the people know that you care for them and you love them. Just that is comforting for them. And in the appendix B, which is on page 118, this is another excerpt from the letter that the Rebbe sent to Ariel Sharon. One of the reasons why we say that God should comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion of Jerusalem, meaning not just you, amongst the whole community. One of the messages we're telling them is you don't stand alone. Yes, it's your family member, and yes, you are mourning, and obviously no one will feel the sadness like you do, but we love you, and we're here as a community, and we're here because we're here to mourn together with you. And even if you don't know what to say, it's okay. You're silent. Text 15 says you don't have to say anything. Let the comforter, let the mourners, let him start the conversation. So we go through some of the things. The limits. Where are we here? And the reward is a silence. Now I'm going to say something, because sometimes, and if you've been to a shiva house, sometimes you walk in and it's like it's too festive. And I actually found an old video of someone who made a joke about why people go to shiva houses. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I actually found it on YouTube. Here, nope. What happened here? 1 second. Oh, here it is. This is what not to do.
Are you down on your luck? Homeless and hungry, yet own a smartphone? Are you a foodie in search of your next blog-worthy meal?
You know, I expected more from the mussels.
Agreed. But the cumin braised scallops are sublime.
Boom. Are you totally stoned and have the munchies? Then iShiva is the app for you. iShiva is the new revolutionary smartphone application that will guide you to the nearest Shiva call within 18 miles of your location.
Dude, Feinbergs are only 2 blocks away.
iShiva will tell you who died and the cause of death.
Barney Schimmelwitz was only 77.
Heart attack. Gets him every time. Shame.
iShiva will tell you what deli is catering.
Oh, but it's Factor's Famous Deli.
iShiva will tell you the name of the surviving relatives, so you're prepared when you show up at their door.
Sylvia, so sorry for your loss.
Oh shoot. Oh man. I clicked on. Hold on.
iShiva will tell you the name of the surviving relatives, so you're prepared when you show up at their door.
Sylvia, so sorry for your loss. Saul was a good man, an honest man.
A real mensch.
Lox, pastrami, corned beef, brisket, chopped liver, blintzes, gefilte fish, and pickled herring. What more could you want?
Juice.
I heard that they use sage and honey in the reduction process of the corned beef hash. Hashtag Factor's Deli, hashtag iShiva, hashtag Schimmelwitzes, hashtag corned beef, hashtag best Shiva ever.
Tag me.
Death doesn't scare me. I've almost died 100 times from Ira's driving.
iShiva will warn you about which yentas to avoid.
We were coming home from Leah's bat mitzvah. Or was it Sarah's? Ira, whose bat mitzvah?
I think Esther over there needs some help. We'll be right back.
And just when you think it couldn't get better, iShiva will tell you which houses offer leftovers. iShiva, the app that lets you munch while you mourn. What a mitzvah. App is free for the homeless. Must prove lack of residence.
Okay, so you get the point. All right, so let's discuss what's not to do. Hold on, let's get out of here. All right, let's discuss over here what not to do. Here we go. Okay, so we said before, the mourner opens the conversation. One thing you shouldn't do is we do not lighten the mood. It's sad. We don't make a joke out of it. Unfortunately, sometimes we see that. We don't ask anything like intrusive. Like these are some of the no phrases. Were you there when he died? Or do you have life insurance? That's probably not a good thing to ask. Or God only takes the good ones. And you shouldn't start with you need to, or don't do this. or you shouldn't start with, like, at least, definitely, we said before, don't start comparing losses. Say, oh, you had your husband, for 50 years, I had it for 40. Don't say that. Don't discuss, the cause of death. Definitely what should be done is don't philosophize, right? What you definitely should do is you should discuss the legacy. What kind of person, why? Because it directs us from the grief to loss to active mourning, and also to learn. It perpetuates a person's memory, and it focuses on the gift. And you see text number 16, very powerful. The Midrash says that God wants to know what are human beings say about
Lesson 3.
God wants to know what are we saying about the people. So it's a part of life, and there's a Jewish way. Can I ask if the car's for sale? It remind me of a joke. Sadie calls the New York Times and says, "I want to put an ad in the what do they call those? The 3-line ads." She says, "Oh, sorry. I want to put it in the obituary." She says, "Okay." She says, $25. Okay, Bernie's dead. Is dead. Says, "Ma'am," it says, "for $25, you get 6 words." Says, "Bernie is dead. Lexus for sale." Oh, right. But Torah tells us this is the right way to do it, and when we do it the right way, we can go through life properly. We all experience hurt, and we all experience loss, and we have to do so properly in order for us to be a healthy, rounded human being. The chapter, the exercise 3.1, this chapter included a number of powerful insights. Identify the insight that resonates with you the most, and then record it in your own words. If you're currently grieving the loss of a loved one, identify an idea that we learned tonight that help you live a fuller life. Next week, where we go? We turn to the afterlife, heaven and hell. After the soul transitions from the body, what happens to it? Where does it go? Does Judaism believe in heaven and hell? Why do we say Kaddish? Next week is going to be awesome. We're going to discuss it all next week. Hopefully you join us. Key points.
Lesson 3. The mourning after. 1. Everyone reacts to and deals with grief differently. No two people are psychologically alike, and no two circumstances of death and bereavement are the same. 2. It is a mitzvah to mourn the loss of a loved one. Processing a loss is critical to the healing process, and this is accomplished by shiva, a mandatory period of grieving. 3. The Torah validates and encourages mourning, but only for a prescribed period of time, after which the mourner is enjoined to transition back to normal life. 4. Some ideas that give a mourner the strength to move on. A. The knowledge that the soul lives on and is not diminished by death. B. It is never too late to mend or improve our relationship with the deceased. Though our physical relationship has ended, we can still give him or her spiritual gifts. C. Life is a deposit, and God decides when to give it and when it must be returned. D. For this soul and its unique mission, this constituted a full life. 5. It is a mitzvah to comfort mourners. The most basic principle of comforting a mourner is simply being there. Our presence offers comfort and lessens the loneliness that often accompanies mourning.
Okay, the email will go out with the recording of the class and additional videos and articles. Any questions before we adjourn for the evening?
Thank you, Rabbi. Nice class.
All right, thank you so much for the feedback. Really appreciate everyone joining me, and we should only share in happy occasions, and this class should remain theoretical. I'm going to post one more link of an actually interesting article. I forgot to post it before. This link actually is that some people started sitting 3 days Shiva instead of 7, which is kind of ridiculous because the word Shiva means 7, but yeah, you can you can read it and interesting article. All right, everybody, have a good week. All the best. Love you guys. Hope to see you in person soon. Don't forget to register for Purim and send in your Purim in the 80s outdoors and send in your Mishloach Monot submissions. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you.